In the history of pro football, there have been over 9,000 games played. Spanning over 70 seasons, there have been over 41,000 touchdowns scored. Here then are the 100 greatest touchdowns of all time.
It's free! He's on his way! Running back across the 25, 30. There's a block, 30, there's a block, 40. Oh, going at the 40, midfield down on Cody. Gets away again, goes to the 40, gets away again. Down to the 30, down to the 20. The 50, the 10. And he scores. Unbelievable.
Was that ever spectacular?
The 100 greatest touchdowns in NFL history. There's never been a show like it. And where do you begin? Well, I'm Steve Sabol, and I'm standing in the NFL Films Library, surrounded by 41,000 touchdowns dating back to the 1920s. Now, how do you decide just what makes a touchdown great? Well, it could be a last-second game-winning score, or it could be one of these bone-jarring runs by Earl Campbell or John Mackey where they blast through a half a dozen tacklers on their way to the end zone. Or it could be Gale Sayers or Hugh McElhenny weaving 70 yards through the shifting dangers of a broken field. Or it could be one of those bizarre follies that just defy explanation. Well, how did we decide? Well, we polled the top football writers in the country. Then we mixed in our opinions, and we've come up with a film on the 100 greatest touchdowns in NFL history. And we're going to start with a little bonus. This is a thrilling adventure that came up just a little short of the end zone.
In 1958, the Rams' Del Schaffner, number 29, a player noted more for his blazing speed than his nifty moves, circumnavigated the Los Angeles Coliseum. The spectacular catch and carry was about to be rewarded with a touchdown. But the referee came up short, and so did the luckless Schaffner. Quarterback John Fourcade of the New Orleans Saints authored one of the wildest plays in pro football history against the Rams in 1987.
Up, throwing deep down the near sideline. It's going to be picked off back to the 40, 45, to the 50, to the 45 of the Saints. The ball comes loose. Another Ram has picked it up. This is a lineman. This one's going to be seen on the highlights for a long, long time. 28 looking to lateral it. The ball goes loose and the Saints have it. It's Fourcade. He's got it at the 40, 45, 50, 40, 30, 25, 20, 10, into the end zone for the touchdown.
Fourcade's frolic had nothing on this volley in 1964.
On a wild scoring play, Ed Brown's pass bounces off two giant defenders and into the hands of Clendon Thomas for a Pittsburgh touchdown.
The earliest of our 100 greatest touchdowns came on a 92-yard interception return by the Giants' immortal Ward Cupp against the Redskins in 1938. In 1966, Larry Wilson, the Cardinals Hall of Fame safety, returned this pass 91 yards against the Eagles. The man walking the tightrope in 1970 was the Browns' Bo Scott, and his high wire act resulted in a 66-yard touchdown against the Raiders. The Vikings' Rich Gannon proved the value of a running quarterback against the Cardinals in 1991.
Gannon pump fake once, now pressure in the middle, spins around, gets away from it, got room to run. Super run! Weaving in and out. The 15, tries to get wide at the 10, cuts it back to the 5. Touchdown! Rich Gannon!
One of the greatest touchdowns happened in a 1950 snowstorm.
Sammy Baugh throws a flat pass. Looks like it's incomplete. No! Warren Lahr catches it lying flat on his back. Gets up, scampers over the goal line to score on the year's weirdest interception.
The NFL definition for crazy may be this botched extra point try by the 1985 Seahawks.
Fielded by the Rams. Craig gets it back at the 20. Throws one in the end zone. He hooks the green. I don't believe it.
When the Redskins' Dick Todd, number 41, broke a 75-yard touchdown against the Giants in 1940, it proved to be the only score on a punt return in the Eastern Division that season. While long touchdowns are exciting, sometimes the greatest scores occur in the most confined spaces.
Jack drops straight back, sets up, gets protection, looks, throws to the sideline. It's caught by Risen. Risen is hit, struggles, trying to get back, reverses, comes to the near side, breaks it back up the sideline, out of bounds. Touchdown! He didn't go out of bounds.
In 1951, the 49ers' Joe Perry proved to the Rams why he was nicknamed the Jet. For acrobatics and style points, the Oilers' Ernest Gibbons registered a perfect 10 in 1989.
Complete to Gibbons inside the first down marker. What a play! I can't believe this play. The 10 to 5, leaps into the end zone, somersaults, touchdown Oilers!
In 1962, the Browns traded number 49 Bobby Mitchell to the Redskins. Guess what happened the first time the two teams met that year? Proof positive that revenge is the sweetest poison.
Bobby takes a sneak pass late in the game and dupes his way through the entire Browns secondary to score the winning touchdown.
The Broncos' Lionel Taylor defined the term catch and run against the Raiders in 1965. The Bears' Ed Sprinkle, number 7, was labeled a hitman. The victim was the Browns' Otto Graham. And to the victor went the spoils. In battle, sometimes you must retreat before you can advance. For the Bears' Eddie Macon, a few steps backwards meant 63 yards forward against the Redskins in 1953.
Hey, wait, that's the wrong way, Eddie. That's better. Now just watch the rest of this spectacular run.
Now you have it, now you don't aptly describes this play between the Jets and the Browns in 1985.
Back to pass, looking long. He heaves it down the middle, and it's going to be intercepted. And then grabbed away by Sony, runs into the end zone for the touchdown. Don Rogers had the ball, and then it was ripped away. Unbelievable.
Number 9, Sonny Jurgensen, is a Hall of Fame quarterback. This sensational 80-yard touchdown by the Eagles' Timmy Brown in 1962 helped put him there. In 1975, the guts and the heart of the Oilers, Ronnie Coleman, produced the game-winning touchdown against the Dolphins. The longest interception return in 49er history belongs to number 27, Alvin Randolph, who was a rookie safety in 1966 when he produced this masterpiece against the Bears. The Rams touchdown Tommy Wilson lived up to his catchy moniker on this classy cross-country touchdown against the Lions in 1958.
Touchdown Tommy eludes some other would-be tacklers and then races 82 yards for Los Angeles touchdown.
In 1964, the Bears' Rudy Bukic threw up a prayer of a pass that, by divine intervention and the divine hands of number 47 Johnny Morris, ended up in the 49ers' end zone. The Browns of 1980 were known as the Cardiac Kids because quarterback Brian Sipe pulled off heart-stopping plays like this one against the Seahawks. Running back Essex Johnson of the Bengals demonstrated to the Eagles why he was considered one of the greatest open field runners of the 70s. When you think of great Dolphin backs, you think of Zonka, Kick, and Morris. Yet the longest run in Dolphin history was this 77-yard burst by Leroy Harris against the Colts in 1977. The Buccaneers' Gary Anderson will not end up in the Hall of Fame, but runs like this will.
Anderson goes to his right, cuts it inside. Anderson to the 45 to the 50. Anderson cuts it back to the 40. Anderson to the 35 to the 30. Anderson to the 25 to the 20. Gary Anderson to the 10-yard line, to the 5. Touchdown, Tampa Bay!
In 1983, a hurdle champion and 49er receiver Ronaldo Skeets Nehemiah reached for the gold and found fool's gold instead. The Falcons' Blaine Geisen scooped up the real treasure, the football, and found 6 points. Trailing 20-17, Joe Namath hit Eddie Bell with the 83-yard game winner with less than a minute to play against the Colts in 1972. While Bell snatched victory from almost certain defeat, one of the greatest thefts in NFL history occurred in 1949, when the Eagles' Russ Kraft stripped the ball from Hall of Famer Crazy Legs Hirsch of the Rams. The greatest thieves of modern times were the 1992 49ers and receiver Mike Sherrard.
He's down, he fumbles the ball. He was already down, I believe, but then it's picked up by Sherrard. Touchdown 49ers! And it's a touchdown!
Well, we've had a couple unbelievable plays in this game.
But the greatest pulling rabbits out of the hats play was this classic pulled off by the Bucs in 1986.
Intercepted by Todd Bell. Bell laterals it over now to Richardson. Laterals it down. And it's taken by Tampa Bay down the right sideline. This Peplin's going to go all the way for the touchdown.
Determination was the mark of this 1973 touchdown by the Dolphins' Charlie Lee against the Colts. The Cowboys' Timmy Newsome often played second fiddle to the great Tony Dorsett, but he played first violin against the Oilers in 1982. Charlie Taylor was a rookie running back in 1964. But this kind of play against the Eagles demonstrated why the Redskins moved him to wide receiver, where he ran all the way to the Hall of Fame. Another rookie running sensation was the Raiders' Bo Jackson in 1987.
Off to Bo, off the left side, gets to the outside, first down. He streaks to the 20, the 30. They'll never catch him. He's at the 50, the 30, the 20. Count them, folks. Silver and black. Bo Jackson. Holy Toledo, 90 yards.
For great opening days, witness this 1965 piece of brilliance by the 49ers' Gary Lewis against the Bears. For being in the right place at the right time, consider this 1984 play by the Colts' Ray Butler.
Back to throw is Mike Pagel. Rolls away from the pressure. He comes back right. Looks down the field. He's looking for some help. Throws it over the middle. It is caught. It might be a touchdown. It was way up in the air. The immaculate reception.
On the 1991 Bills, Kenneth Davis was not a starter. On many other teams, he would have been a star.
35, still going at the 40. Midfield down to the 40. Down to the 35, to the 30. A spectacular touchdown run by Kenneth Davis.
Was that ever spectacular?
This play vaulted the Miami Dolphins into Super Bowl VI. Safety Dick Anderson intercepted a Johnny Unitas pass, and behind 7 perfect blocks, clinched a shutout victory in the AFC Championship. On opening day in 1978, the Dolphins' Delvin Williams set sail against the Jets on one of the most breathtaking runs of the decade. The 49ers' Abe Woodson was a track star in college, and those skills made him one of the greatest return men in NFL history. This 96-yarder came against the Lions in 1961. In 1990, the Chiefs sacked Seahawks quarterback Dave Craig 9 times, an NFL record 7 of them by number 58 Derek Thomas. But on the last play of the game, with Kansas City leading 16-10, it was the gutty Craig who remained standing.
You have to hit a seam here. You've got to find a seam.
He's back. Thomas is there. He slipped away from Thomas. Craig back, throws it. Caught in the end zone.
Touchdown.
Touchdown, Seahawks. It is caught in the end zone. The Seahawks are going to win the ball game. As Scans, he got it.
Unbelievable.
On Thanksgiving Day 1974, the Cowboys' great Roger Staubach was knocked out of the game and replaced by unheralded rookie Clint Longley. Under the harshest scrutiny, Longley tossed a touchdown pass to Drew Pearson in the closing seconds, which defeated the arch-rival Redskins 24-23. Football is above all a team sport, but often victory depends on individual brilliance, like the Bengals' Lamar Parrish's punt return against the Browns in 1974. The University of Oklahoma has produced many great running backs, but none more explosive than the Browns' Greg Pruitt, who mesmerized the Rams in 1978. They called him the General, and quarterback Bob Lee led his Falcons to an upset victory over the favored Vikings with his dream of a play in 1973. The Chiefs' Warren McVay was called Mac the Knife, and he cut a cruel path through the dark night in the Bengals in 1969. The Saints' Charlie Brown had few shots at stardom, but he made the most of this chance against the Steelers in 1968. Another one-shot wonder was the Lions' Larry Walton. But what a shot he fired. A weaving, twisting, and turning 60-yard slow-motion extravaganza against the Green Bay Packers in 1971. While Walton was never a star, the Cardinals' versatile Terry Metcalf was. He was a runner, a receiver, and a return specialist. And his specialty was spectacular plays like this one against the Browns in 1974. In the pure sense of great individual performances, one man against many, this play by the Steelers' Roy Jefferson against the Cardinals is arguably the best ever.
Of all the thousands of touchdowns in this library, only one in about 400 made the cut to become one of the top 100 of all time. And of course, when it comes to agreeing on which touchdowns to feature, well, there's bound to be some controversy. You know, how can you include this touchdown and not include that one? And why is this one in the top 20 and that one isn't? Well, there's one thing that we all could agree on, and that's that the final 50 touchdowns are even more spectacular than the first 50. So here we go. Let's continue with the greatest run by bruising Hall of Fame running back Marion Motley.
Graham back to pass, shakes off George Nixon and slings one out in the left flat to Marion Motley. And the hulking fullback hits with the force of a steam engine as he knocks over the Steelers like 10 pins on a bowling alley. Motley drops his helmet to the crowd as he jogs over the goal line to give the Browns a 17.
Somehow Motley kept his head. And 31 years later, it was hats off to Lynn Kane, who overran the eventual world champion 49ers in 1981. In 1967, Jack Snow's spectacular tip-of-the-ball catch preserved a tie in Baltimore, enabling the Rams to win the Coastal Division title. Snow's sticky fingers did in the Colts, whose butterfingers actually helped them later in 1981.
His holder Landry, there it is. The kick is blocked. And Landry tried to recover and rolls free. The Colts have it. And it's going to be pulled out of bounds at the lateral around. Here's Landry. Landry is going in for a touchdown.
That's the wildest play in the history of the league.
They played volleyball. Boy, I'll tell you, if they worked on that play, they all have their master's degree.
Strange twists and surprise endings make for a great story. And in 1964, Jimmy Orr proved they make for a great touchdown.
Here's one for the Bucs. Johnny Unitas hits Jimmy Orr on the sideline. Jimmy steers through the Lions for 56 yards before the Lions catch up and jar the ball loose. Raymond Berry tries to pick up the ball but pushes it into the end zone. Lenny Moore finally falls on the ball for a Colt touchdown.
In 1974, Jackie Smith's spectacular second, third, and fourth effort score helped the Cardinals beat the Cowboys 31-28. This play was Smith's greatest ever. In 1979, Buffalo's little-known Roland Hooks turned in his greatest game ever. Against the Bengals, Hooks touched the ball 4 times in the second half and scored on all 4 carries. Hooks was in the zone on that day, while Hall of Famer Lenny Moore seemed to be in the zone throughout the entire 60s.
Perhaps the most elusive runner in the league, Moore gets away from 3 Packers at the sideline, skips loose from 2 desperation tackle attempts, and scores.
Check out the fancy footwork of another Hall of Fame great, Ollie Matson, in 1955.
Quick thinking by Matson calls for a last-second lateral to Dave Mann, who passes on the run to Don Stone.
3 years earlier in 1952, Matson launched a bizarre fumble fest and an even more unlikely touchdown.
Hold on to your seats for this play, folks, for it'll be a long time before you see another like it. Ollie Matson takes the handoff but fumbles. Everyone gets into the act as a wild scramble follows. Big Bill Fisher finally grabs up the loose ball, and the 250-pound guard goes barreling down the sidelines. Fisher has a fine time before flipping to Billy Cross, who hops into the end zone.
In 1978, Earl Campbell turned his 28th Monday night carry into an 81-yard gallop to glory.
20, 25, 30, 35, 40. At the 50, he may go. At the 30, at the 20, at the 10, at the 5, touchdown!
In 1975, Walter Payton took a pitch out against the Saints. Years later, the NFL's rushing champion would call it his greatest run ever. You won't find Steve Davis's name high on the all-time rushing list, but his touchdown against Denver is right up there. Pound for pound, there are not many backs tougher than the Bengals' 180-pound James Brooks. In 1986, he simply willed himself downfield up in New England.
The 50 to the 45, down to the 40 on the far side of the field. He's going to be running. No, he's still 20, 15. 10, 5-yard line, still on his feet, plunging, touchdown. Oh, James Brooks just absolutely refused to go down.
In 1977, Billy Johnson stared up at the King Dome roof, then took off on another of his serpentine odysseys that leave defenders paralyzed and viewers mesmerized. "20 years before White Shoes, there was the Wisp, Willie Gallimore, number 28 of the Chicago Bears.
Galloping Willie Gallimore, one of the flashiest men to hit the National Football League in years, reverses his field, bobbles the ball, catches it, brushes off tackler after tackler, and finally winds up in the end.
In Super Bowl 14, the difference was lanky, big play receiver John Stallworth.
Bradshaw calls out the signals. Remember, Pittsburgh, the most dangerous fourth-quarter team in the NFL.
Bradshaw pumping, firing downfield. There goes Stallworth. He pulls it in at the 30, the 20, the 10, the 5, and it's a...
The Steelers won their 4th Super Bowl and made history. In 1952, Wilfred White made dubious history.
Now get set for a play you'll probably never see again. The Bears' Whizzer White, while attempting to pass, spots the Rams about to close in, so backward he goes. With 3 Rams breathing hard on his heels, White sprints goalward, but in the wrong direction. For 51 yards, White hit the backward trail. Then, to top it all off, he gets hit and fumbles.
The biggest loss ever. Perhaps it's best swept under the rug. But a year later, in 1953, Detroit's Bob Hunchy Hornschmeyer took off on a memorable 49-yard sweep.
Hunchy Hornschmeyer then takes Lane's pitch out, cuts between 2 Colt defenders, stiff arms the safety man, waits for his blockers, and even though he's hit from behind, keeps right on his merry way to rack up 6 points for the Lions.
The shining moment for Marcus Allen is his 74-yarder against the Redskins in Super Bowl 18, the longest run in Super Bowl history. In 1957, Y.A. Tittle and R.C. Owens teamed up on the unstoppable alley-oop play.
To the right, this has got to be the alley-oop. There's no time for anything else. Tittle throws. Owens is double-teamed. He's going downfield near the goal line. He goes up.
Owens leaped over defenders. In 1992, Dallas's Emmitt Smith just bounced off them.
Handoff, Smith coming right, trying to outrun the coverage, makes a cut, gets it. Oh, he's still going. Oh, my God. He's going to score. He's got the 5. It's a touchdown. It's absolutely ridiculous. It should never have happened, but Emmitt Smith does the impossible, this time from 29 yards out.
Oh, this is incredible. This is one of the very best.
In 1950, it took future Cowboy coach Tom Landry to finally bring some order to a maddening Steelers-Giants affair.
As the Giants roll, gathers it in on the Giant 30, heads upfield. But what's this? It looks like the Steelers may still be in the game after all. No, it's the Giants again as Ray Poole comes in to play the old stolen ball trick. Finding himself in trouble, laterals to teammate Tom Landry, who scoots all the way for the final score.
A year later in the 51 championship game, Norm Van Brocklin and Tom Fears hooked up to give the Rams their first and only NFL title. The hallmark of Vince Lombardi's Packers was perfect execution, and no one play exemplified it more than this 84-yard Jim Taylor sweep against the Lions in 1964. In Super Bowl VII, the undefeated Dolphins led the Redskins 14-0. Garo Yepremian eyed the uprights, and what ensued is now known simply as Garo's Gaffe.
Loose on the field. It is picked up by Garo. He tries to throw a pass. Deflected in the air. Grabbed by Bass. 40, 35, 30. He's going to score. Garo had the football, and it looked from here as if he tried to throw a forward pass with it.
Don Shula's perfect 72 Dolphins hung on to win despite Garo's antics. And speaking of perfection, how about the stride of the juice, O.J. Simpson? In 1956, Chicago's Harlan Hill made the greatest catch of his era, and perhaps of all time, in a 17-all tie with the Giants.
Harlan Hill makes the catch of the year to complete an unbelievable comeback in professional football's most spectacular game.
In the 1940 championship, the Bears destroyed Washington 73-0. Still talked about is Bill Osmanski's 68-yard touchdown, and the block thrown by George Wilson that took out half the Redskin roster. In 1961, Minnesota's Hugh McElhenny faced his old team, the 49ers, and reminded them why he was always called the King.
Hugh builds up a full head of steam, then turns in the most exciting run of the year. McElhenny sidestepped one defender after another to go all the way.
In 1990, Eagle quarterback Randall Cunnungham pulled off an escape that Harry Houdini would have been proud of.
Cunningham is back. He's being trapped. He ducks under 3 men. He's looking. He's rolling. He's heaving it deep downfield for Barnett, who leaps and has it at the 40, at the 35-30, 25-20. Barnett's going to score!
Cunningham and Fred Barnett combined on a daring 95-yard miracle. But today, the miracle maker is Barry Sanders, who deserves 2 plays.
Breaks one tackle to the 40, fights free! He's on his way! 25, 20, 15, 10, and he scores! Unbelievable! 43-yard run, he was tied up twice. Away to Barry off the right. Barry to the 45, and bumps to the 40, breaks it 35, 30, he's gone! Unbelievable! Touchdown, Lions, Barry Sanders! Oh my gosh, what a run!
In 1966, the Bills and the Mud were no match for Mike Garrett in the AFL Championship. The trademark of another great back, Roger Craig, is his high kick, and he was at his knee-pumping best against the Rams in 1988.
Off the middle to Craig, and he breaks loose and runs loose. He gets use of the 30 to the 25. He's down to the 20. Breaks loose again. He's to the 10. 5. Touchdown 49ers. Oh, what a bonanza. Spectacular run by Roger Craig.
Might be the best run of his career.
Selecting the best run of the legendary Jim Brown is virtually impossible. But this effort against Dallas in 1963 captures his true essence, a supreme blend of power and speed. In Super Bowl 17, the Redskins needed a yard on 4th down. They called on the Diesel, Big John Riggins.
Snap, hand to Riggins, good hold. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35, the 30, the 20. He's gone. He's gone. Touchdown, Washington Redskins.
Riggins' clutch run earned him an MVP award. Just a few weeks earlier, Tony Dorsett sprinted 99 yards and into the record books as well.
Goal line defense for the Vikings. A handoff, Dorsett up the middle. Here he goes. Cuts to his right. Going all the way. He goes. To the 30. To the 40. He's got two men to beat. To the 40. To the 30. To the 20. To the 10. The 5. Touchdown! Unbelievable! Tony Dorsett is in the record books. 99 yards.
In 1988, Steve Young's receivers were covered. He proved dramatically that indeed, necessity is the mother of invention.
He's going to be sacked. No, gets away. He runs, gets away again, goes to the 40, gets away again, to the 35, cuts back at the 30, to the 20, the 50, the 10. He dives. Touchdown, 49ers.
No quarterback created more mayhem than Fran Tarkenton. In 1966, Ripley's Believe It or Not met the Keystone Cops on one of Fran's patented scrambles against the 49ers. In 1978, the Raiders faced the Chargers in San Diego. The final play was so zany it would later change the rules of pro football. It was an infamous play nicknamed the Holy Roller.
Oakland trails 20-14. 10 seconds left. The crowd takes up a chant of defense. Robisky and Banaszak are the backs. Slot right, Branch inside. Bradshaw, Stabler back. Here comes the rush. He sidesteps. Can he throw? He can. The ball flipped forward is loose. A wild scramble. 2 seconds on the clock. Casper grabbing the ball. It is ruled a fumble. Casper has recovered in the end zone. The Oakland Raiders have scored on the most zany, unbelievable, absolutely impossible dream of a play. Madden is on the field. He wants to know if it's real. They said yes. Get your big butt out of here. He does. There's nothing real in the world anymore. The Raiders won the football game. 52,000 people minus a few lonely Raider fans are stunned. This one will be relived forever.
The Holy Roller. Boy, that was one for the ages. But you know, when you think about it, there are only a handful of plays in NFL history that are so memorable that you remember where you were, what you were doing, and who you were with when they happened. Well, the final 10 plays in the greatest 100 touchdowns in NFL history are precisely those kinds of plays. Now, number 10 took place in the Meadowlands about 15 years ago, and I missed it. I was a cameraman then, and I wasn't shooting that weekend, so I went over to my dad's house to watch it on television. And I remember I thought the game was over, so I headed out into the kitchen to get something to eat. Then suddenly, something incredible happened. And my dad, well, he starts yelling and screaming, "Steve, you got to get back here and watch this." Well, by the time I raced back to the television, it was over. I had missed it. It was a miracle that I had to watch on replay.
We had the ball, as I recall, and I was late in the game. We had started off by running a couple of quarterbacks, just quarterback to run with the ball, fall on it, to hold it, just to run the clock down. The Eagles were very aggressive after Joe, and so we called it to be a 65, which is just a fullback buck into the line.
Under 30 seconds left in the game. From here on in, Pizarczyk can just fall on the football, and there is nothing the Eagles can do. And Pizarczyk fumbles the football. It's picked up by Herman Edwards. 15, 10, 5, touchdown Eagles. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I do not believe what has occurred here, ladies and gentlemen. Talk about miracles, folks. I do not believe this one, but it has happened as the Eagles beat the Giants 19-17 before a shocked crowd at the Meadowlands.
In 1958, the Giants and Colts played a sudden-death playoff for the NFL championship. The classic final drive, orchestrated by the incomparable John Unitas, was witnessed by millions on television. And it was the moment that the game of pro football became the new American pastime.
It's 3rd and 1 yard to go for the championship. Barking out the signals for the Baltimore Colts. Unitas gives to Amici. The Colts are the world champions. Amici scores!
An interesting thing on that play, which was the genius of the Unitas, and a lot of people miss this. We were on the right hash mark, and everybody in the world, including the Giants, thought we were going to go for an off tackle to the left, and if we missed, we'd be right smack in front of the goalpost. And John just took that little bit of a gamble and ran to the right on that play, and everybody was stacked to the left. And he had Lenny Moore there, who was not known as a great blocker, and he threw a key block, and it was wide open.
While pro football became popular in 1958, John Mackey reinvented the position of tight end in 1963. It was like stepping from a biplane into the space shuttle. And like a select few, number 88 transformed a team game into an individual sport. On November 20th, 1966, this runaway locomotive ran over and then away from the entire Detroit Lion defense on a play that still seems more fantasy than fact.
Basically what happened, I caught a little diagonal pass and I turned up and I started running toward the goal line. And when I saw those defenders coming, I made up in my mind that I was going to punish somebody. They had about 7 or 8 guys that were waiting to make the tackle. I closed my eyes and just said, I'm just going to ram into it. And I came right through it.
Another player who seemed to vanish, then reappear, was the great Gale Sayers. As a rookie in 1965, he accomplished a most extraordinary feat. On the next to last game of the regular season, he scored 6 touchdowns in the mud against the 49ers.
I could see everybody on the field, and so I knew where to run, where to cut. I had a feel for where people were. There'd be a fellow coming from my blind side, and no way I could see him, but I could feel him.
Late in the 4th quarter, with a field an impassable quagmire, the sure-footed Sayers scored his record-tying 6th touchdown on an electrifying 85-yard punt return.
With 3:10 remaining, the 49ers will have to go from their 8-yard line. Montana trying to drive them the length of the field here with the game in the balance. 16-13, the Bengals lead.
The one thing about not just myself, but our team seemed to, the tougher the situation, the better they seem to focus. And I think the only thing you can point to is that they're competitors and they're winners.
Montana back to throw. Throws over the middle. A fight gets for right. Right into the 20. He's down to the 19 for a first down. Joe back to throw. He looks. He throws. He completes it to Craig. He's down to the 10. 39 seconds remaining. Montana at quarterback. Back to throw Montana. Steps up, throws. Touchdown 49ers. Taylor at the 12 touchdown. A 10-yard pass. The 49ers have scored with 34 seconds remaining. And the 49ers have won the Super Bowl.
In the 1975 playoffs, the Vikings led the Cowboys by 4 with under 2 minutes to play. Roger Staubach and Drew Pearson hadn't connected on a single pass in the entire game. But suddenly, the two clicked on 4 receptions, including a huge 4th and 16 play with under a minute left.
And then we came back and I said, Drew, can you run an in route like you did to beat Washington, which was actually in 1974, and then break it deep? And he said, yeah. He said, I'll run an in route, which is our favorite route, which is a deep, what we call a 16 route. I said, act like you're running an in route. Just don't try to run by him. and then kind of break deep, and I'll pump, get Krause. I'll keep Krause away from getting over to you, and that's all we did. And I just told everybody else, don't worry about it, I'm going to throw it to Drew.
Well, the Cowboys need a miracle. Roger takes the snap, pumps it once. He's going long, down the near sideline for Drew Pearson. Pearson makes the catch at the 5, touchdown! Staubach hit Pearson on a 50-yard touchdown. Would you believe it?
What happened on that Hail Mary play, I think the blessing to the whole play was that Staubach underthrew me on the play.
I pumped to the left to keep Krause. Krause really could have made the play if I hadn't pumped to the left, and that really held him up for a second, and then Drew got outside of right, and the ball was underthrown. By me pumping, Drew really got down the field a little bit too far.
So we were running downfield, and I looked back, and I saw that the ball was underthrown, and I was able to put on the brakes and come back. Nate fell down, and I thought I had dropped the ball. It hit my hands, and I thought I had dropped it, and I was bent over, and it was stuck between my elbow and my hip. I couldn't believe when I had the ball, and the fans in Minnesota, of course, couldn't believe it either.
It was a weird moment, and I think that particular play was the biggest single play that I've ever been a part of. It changed a whole season, and it got us back to a Super Bowl when we needed to get back in 1975 on our comeback for the late 70s for the Cowboys.
On January 10th in the NFC Championship game, the Cowboys were desperately trying to hold off the young 49ers led by Joe Montana. But in the final 5 minutes, the Niners chipped away with short runs and passes until they faced a critical 3rd down from the Dallas 6.
Some of your tapes, they show Bill talking to Joe on the sideline right before that play. And he says, look at Freddie, and then hold it, and throw it high back to Dwight where either he gets it or it goes out of bounds.
We're going to call a bin pass halfback fan or corner. He's going to break up and break into the corner. Okay. You got it? If you don't get what you want, you'll just simply throw the ball away. Okay. You know what I mean? Hold it, not there, away it goes.
Big play out, let's go!
On that chilly afternoon by the Bay, the 49ers began their domination of a decade with the catch.
So fasten your seatbelts now. We've got turbulence and plenty of it here at Candlestick Park mouth. Everything hangs in the balance now. The season, the outcome of a Super Bowl berth hangs in the balance. Montana rolling out the right, looking toward the end zone, throwing under pressure, throws his pass, caught by Clark. Clark got a touchdown. Dwight Clark has it. It's a touchdown for the 49ers.
It couldn't have happened any more like it was supposed to. I mean, it was Freddie Solomon breaking out to the right, and I roll behind him, and as Joe is rolling out, after Joe checks Freddie out to see if he's open, then he looks back to me, and I slide back across the back of the end line.
Dwight Clark's leaping grab set San Francisco on a course to 4 Super Bowl victories in the 80s. 14 seasons earlier, back in 1967, Vince Lombardi's Packers were bidding to win their 3rd straight NFL title. It was bitter cold, and the Packers trailed Dallas in the Ice Bowl.
When we came on the field as a team to start that drive, and this is most important, everybody in that huddle had the look that we were going to get it done somehow, some way, and it was the greatest feeling in the world. I felt that way, and as I looked into the eyes of the other players in that huddle, it was a great thing to see.
Behind 17-14, Bart Starr led a determined drive. Number 44, Donnie Anderson, and Chuck Mercine, number 30, skated for hard-earned gains, and the stage was set for one of the greatest touchdowns of all time. The distance was a mere yard, an historical yard, the longest yard.
2 other times earlier in the game, we had run a play which we call a wedge play, designed strictly for short yardage out in the field. It was also a goal line play. The problem was that at that end, the south end of the field, a shadow is cast down there late in the season by the scoreboard, and the field was really frozen. And so the backs could not stand up and even get to the line of scrimmage. So when I went to the sideline, I told Coach Lombardi the wedge play would work. I said, but the backs can't get there. I said, I'm upright. I can just feel my way in for a couple of steps and then just lunge in there. He said, great, run it. Let's get this thing over with.
Here are the Packers. 3rd down, inches to go. To Bader. 17-14. Cowboys out in front. Packers trying for the go-ahead score. Starr begins the count. Takes the snap. He's got the quarterback sneaking. He's in for the touchdown. The Packers are out in front. 20-17. There's 13 seconds showing on the clock, and the Green Bay Packers are going to be world champions.
It's probably the greatest play in all the 15 years when he fell over for that touchdown, and we won that ball game. We knew we were going to win our 3rd championship in a row.
Lombardi's Packers became the team of the 60s. But in the early 70s, the Dolphins had emerged as the new NFL power. In the 1974 playoffs, they faced the Raiders in arguably the greatest game ever played. The Raiders and their silver and black fans could taste victory. But deep into the 4th quarter, the Dolphins retook the lead.
Benny Malone had the ball, and he was sweeping right, and we're trying to get down to set up a field goal that would win the game. But Benny ran over about 2 or 3 tacklers and got into the end zone for a touchdown. But the problem was Oakland still had some time to do something with the ball.
Specifically, Ken Stabler had time. And in this white-hot battle, the Snake was at his coolest.
Stabler came over, and I was excited because we had things moving, and I could see how we could put him away. So I had all these ideas. You know, let's do this, we'll go to that, boom, he goes there, you go there, we'll run, we'll pass, we'll fake, we'll kick, we'll do. And I'm going on and on, and I'm hiding for anyway, hands are going. So I'm facing the field, and Stabler's facing me, and he's listening. He's kind of looking around, and he says, you know what, John? And I thought he had a play. I go, no, what? Yeah, what? Yeah, what are we going to do? Go. And he goes, boy, says, these fans are getting their money's worth today, aren't they? We didn't have any fear.
Stabler somehow found Clarence Davis as Miami's 4th straight Super Bowl bid vanished into a sea of hands.
Here he is, fading, looking. He's under the gun. He's tied, he throws. It is. He caught it.
It was just like it was going to happen, and it happened. The guy was incredible. He'd made miraculous plays all day. We had him in our grasp. He was going down, and I think his knee must have been a millimeter before it hit the ground. We had the coverage. We had 2 men on the guy that caught the football, but he still caught the football.
You'll never see a better game than this one, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure you'll agree.
Frankly, it was maybe the greatest football game I have ever seen. It was just incredible.
In 3 Rivers Stadium 2 years earlier, Steeler fans had abandoned hope against Oakland in the '72 playoffs. What took place was the single greatest touchdown in NFL history. A miracle. The Immaculate Reception.
The Oakland Raiders have taken a 7-6 lead in a tough football game, and this crowd is standing. 50,000 of them, seeing their team go behind by 1 point. Hang on to your hats. Here come the Steelers out of the huddle. It's down to 1 big play. 4th down and 10 yards to go. Harry Bradshaw at the controls. And Bradshaw back and looking again. Bradshaw running out of the pocket, looking for somebody to throw to, fires it downfield. And there's a collision. It's caught out of the air. The ball is pulled in by Franco Harris. Harris is going for a touchdown for Pittsburgh.
Probably one of the greatest plays in the history of professional football. Seemed hopeless, obviously. And I remember taking a snap and dropping back and going. We're just trying to get a first down. And because, I mean, we had no big play threats at the time, and got pressure up the middle. Boy, I had to scramble. Guy got his hand on me, and I was able to get rid of him and got to the right. Guy came up and put his hands up my face, and I moved back to the left. Another guy came at me, and I just cut loose with everything I had on him. I got these bodies on me, and I'm laying down on the field, and I hear this huge
roar. I'm telling you, I knew this is a roar for good things. This is not a roar for bad things. Something great has happened. The roar was unbelievable. And when I finally got up, people were coming off on the sideline. People were grabbing me and trying to pick me up. And I was, what happened? What happened? I didn't know what happened until we had gone inside in the locker room. It was just unbelievable.
When I reached the Steelers, I had this drive in me that I wanted us to be #1. And in that playoff game, it went down to the wire. And I just told myself, Franco, just play it all the way through.
Franco Harris pulling the football. I don't even know where it came from.
Bradshaw took the snap. He drops back. I look at him. I look at Franco. Franco's doing nothing. He missed his block. Bradshaw scrambles out that way. Franco comes jogging down the field. Half speed. He's my man. I'm jogging half speed with him. I saw Bradshaw throw the ball. I shot over to help make the tackle. Meanwhile, Franco, who had just drifted over there, it goes right to him. Had I been as lazy as Franco, that ball would have come to me at waist high. Now I spin around. I still can make the play. Mick Macon, who no one ever would remember, their tight end, smart player, dives right in the back of my legs. What's he got to lose? They're going to lose the game anyway. The biggest clip ever. No clip called. I remember laying on the ground watching Franco run down the sideline, just could not believe it happened.
I thought we got taken. The word is stronger than that by everyone, and we should have had that football game, but we didn't get it. But to his credit, Mr. Rooney got it. He was in an elevator. He didn't even see the play. He was going down in the locker room. He told me later to congratulate this guy for having a great season. He thought they lost, which they should have, but there was nothing we were going to do to prevent it. And it's one of the great moments in National Football League history. It was a mistake, but it was one of those things. It was I guess it was an honest mistake, and Fuqua knows he hit it, and it should have been our game.
It is said that luck is unpredictable, but talent takes advantage of it. The Steelers certainly did that, and to this very day we dream of that incredible play and of the next great touchdown waiting to amaze us all, just over the horizon, from out of nowhere.
From out of nowhere came Franco Harris, riding a white stallion down the field, heading up Franco's Italian army, charging under the football and galloping off into the sunset.